So welcome to Enigmatic Consciousness. I'm here with Shayleen from the Light Journey today, so welcome.
Thank you.
So why don't you give us a little bit of background on yourself, Shayleen?
Yes, so I'm a Reiki practitioner and teacher, and my journey to Reiki started. I'd have to go all the way back to my childhood. I had a lot of experiences really early on in my life that gave me a different perspective, I guess you could say. So I found that I was always asking really big questions about life. Why are we here? What's my purpose? Um, I grew up in a home where there was abuse, neglect, and trauma. So that also really contributed to, I'd say, my ability to be a little bit more sensitive to other people's energy and things that are going on around me. So growing up, I was asking these really big questions and seeking answers, what happens when we die? Why do people treat each other the way they do? What is love and what does it really mean to love unconditionally? And it was about the time of, I was like 17 or 18, and I was sitting on the back step of my aunt's house one night, and I must have been a rough day that I had, but I remember looking up at the stars and feeling like I missed them. Like it was like looking up into the sky and feeling like a longing to be there. Like somehow deep inside me, I felt like that was home. That was where I was supposed to be, or maybe even where I came from. And it, to reflect on that insight or that idea of like, how can I miss somewhere I've never been? And I'd say that was kind of the start of my spiritual journey, my awakening, if you will, of really all of a sudden kind of having this idea that, there was something outside of myself, that I was a part of something bigger. So having kind of these insights and these ideas, this longing for answers, looking at my childhood and my upbringing, I really gained the insight that I didn't want other people to feel the way that I had felt or gone through the things that I went through. So at that time, I thought I wanted to be a therapist. Like psychology was the route that really attracted me through school, because it focused so much around the brain, human behavior, why we act the way we act, conditioning, and all of those things. So it really intrigued me. And when I went to university, I spent some time also studying philosophy, and just, again, really spoke to that part of myself that, was asking those big questions. School was definitely an interesting experience going to post-secondary. I was on a bursary at the time, and I had to kind of weigh that decision of if I wanted to continue pursuing the psychology route. I was kind of struggling there, and I stopped going to school and I got into the work field. So that was like my early 20s. And I just started to work. Everyone tells you go to school, and then after school you get a good job, and then after that you start a family, maybe you buy a home. So I was going through these motions of what I thought I was supposed to be doing, all the while feeling that dissatisfaction deep inside my soul. Like I was aware of this pull, like there was something I was supposed to be doing with my time, was my first insight. There's something I was supposed to be doing with my time, but I didn't know what it was. And so I worked from the time I was 18 to 25 in all kinds of different jobs, mostly retail. I would hold management positions. I did a little bit of administration work, like being people's personal assistant. I've always really had a knack for organization. So, that was a way to help other people. But at the end of the day, I still was feeling drained and feeling like the time that I was putting in I wasn't like seeing a return on, the things that I valued and believed in, especially just having, these big ideas about the universe and who I am and what my role is here. So I was working in a job, the last job that I had before I received my Reiki training. I was a manager of a retail store, and it was one of those jobs where I just didn't feel valued. I didn't feel heard. You know, I was always hearing from my managers, my superiors, that how valued I was as an employee. And, you know, they could see all of these good things I was doing for the company. But every time I had ideas or suggestions on how to improve things, you know, it was kind of met with resistance. It was like our way or the highway. So,
And that's
so that was,
very, very true of that industry, where I call it like dangling the carrot, because they will kind of say what they need to say to keep you on board, but then like the moment you have anything that's outside of like their, it's like being in a prison cell and like being told like you're doing such a great job in here, and then the moment you try to open the door they're like, no, no, you got to stay in there though, like we.
yeah, absolutely. So it was disheartening to me because, um, I really throw myself into the things that I do love and I enjoy. So for me, it was, you know, I treated that job as if it was my own business, and then exactly to be met with that resistance. So, you know, you kind of take it personally, even though, you know, for some people it's just a job. But so I internalized a lot of that experience. And through the experiences I had in my childhood, you know, I was already susceptible to depression and anxiety. Um, by the time that I had left my parents' home, I had post-traumatic stress disorder. And I have a full story on my website too about me. I don't want to go into it too deeply, but so there were some mental health things that I was struggling with already prior to, you know, going into school, dealing with that stress, going into the workplace, dealing with that stress. So I was about 23 and I started having panic attacks and chest pain. Like I actually thought that I was having a heart attack, and, you know, went to my doctor, told them what was going on. You know, they send you for the whole batch of tests, you know, stress tests, they check your heart, they check your blood pressure, they check all these things, and everything was coming back completely normal. So I was given a clean bill of health, which was great. You know, there's nothing going on physically. They kept telling me I was too stressed. There's too much on my plate. You're too stressed out. And I'm going to tell you, there's nothing that makes you more stressed than hearing that, like somebody to tell you, oh, you're stressed out. You're like, okay, I'm already aware, but also nobody was telling me how to be less stressed. Nobody was telling me how to manage the stress, or, you know, giving me healthy coping mechanisms. So I kind of had to make a decision. You know, I was aware that I didn't want to put, you know, medication in my body. I believe medication has a place, absolutely. But for me, I didn't want that to be the solution to my problems. I had experience with medication in my teenage years when I was first diagnosed with my depression and my anxiety. And I just found for me that it was more numbing than helpful. So, and it wasn't getting to the root of the problem as well. You know, it was kind of a Band-Aid solution. So there was obviously more work that I had to do. And because I was so stressed out, I was, you know, being met with resistance from my job. I was feeling really unhappy. And just, again, that it felt like that pressure of like, almost like you're running out of time, which makes, you know, I'm like, I still don't fully understand that one, but I think it's just that guiding, maybe it's the flow, something guiding that's just to get my awareness to say you're on the wrong path. So I spent some time just reflecting. You know, I was getting that pressure from my family. You know, what should I do? I'm unhappy in my job. And, you know, some people said, go back to school. So I was looking at, you know, courses that just interested me. Did I want to go back and finish the psych degree? Did I want to pursue philosophy, start something new? And I made a list of things that really interest me, you know, the things I really love to do, how I love spending my time. And if time or money wasn't, you know, a problem, what would I do? So I kind of narrowed it down to, you know, as I mentioned, I kind of have a love for organization. So looking at Mount Royal, they had a Feng Shui course that caught my interest. I was like, oh, wow, you know, this sounds really interesting to kind of learn the energy side of balancing these physical items in our space to create like that chi, that balance. And then I saw the Reiki course, and that took it a step further because it kind of touched that part of me. As I mentioned, you know, one of my first big spiritual insights was connecting to like the stars, to space, the universe, and then reading this beautiful course outline about, this practice of universal energy, looking at the body as a holistic mind, physical, mental, emotional, it resonated with me. So before I ended up leaving my retail job, my very last job, I was actually working with a woman who was a Reiki practitioner, and I didn't know that at the time. But when I had expressed that I was considering this course and was curious about it, and mentioning it would definitely be an investment to take the training, she said, "Well, I have my certification." She said, "If you want to have a session and just see what it's all about before making that decision, I'd love to do that for you." So I had a session, what was my very first Reiki session. And it was just such a magical experience for me, like right down to, the crystals that she laid out and was like, if there's anything that you're drawn to, or if you want to have any of them. And this was before I knew anything about energy healing or crystals or, just anything to this nature. So, she was able to just tell me things about myself and my energy that I had never shared with other people, things that much like I said, with, my belief about even just the stars and that connection and feeling it so deeply in our life, and that conditioning, we keep some of those thoughts to ourselves. So for her to affirm some of those things that I had been keeping so deeply, it just really, I say it was like the light bulb went out. It was like lock and key. I just felt it was like this was the thing that had been searching for, was Reiki. So I took a big leap of faith. I quit my job, and with the help of my mother-in-law, I signed up for the Reiki course at Mount Royal, and I did my training. And I spent 1 year after receiving my master certificate, 1 year practicing, doing healing on myself and friends and family. And with that, there's definitely lifestyle changes and shifts that happen. So for me at that time, I was kind of getting into that space. Okay, well, I need income. I need to pay my bills. I should probably consider going back to work. I took some time to work through that stress and gain better tools and resources for being able to not only understand myself, but to take better care of myself. So trying to go back to work after having this new, profound experience with the Reiki, it was difficult. I felt like it was like, the two kind of extremes on the spectrum. So it wasn't feeling comfortable for me to go back into those work settings that I previously was in and was used to. So I decided to take a different route, and I found a wonderful part-time job for a business here in Calgary, a Laura boutique. They make handmade jewelry, and they were just looking for somebody to help with like social media and event planning and things like that. And I was like, okay, I have some experience doing this. So I applied for that job, and I worked for them for, I think it was about 7 months. And, just gained all of this experience for working with a small business. And I did that for about a year. And then again, it was like that same kind of feeling, that itch coming in of feeling like I'm not quite satisfied with how I'm spending my time. And I talked to a life coach, and I love life coaches because they're just so wonderful in their approach and their ability to draw, we all have the answers inside of us. So they have a knack of really just kind of doing that. And for me, she helped me gain that insight again, that I wanted to be the person at the end of the day who I was putting my time in for, and also reaping the benefits of, my work ethic and the hard work that I was doing. So when I first had my Reiki training, it wasn't my intention, I'm going to do this as a business. It was something that kind of came later on. I saw that it was a skill that I had, and it was a way for me to help people, which has been one of those motivating forces for me my whole life. How am I going to help others? So I saw that I had this skill. I wasn't quite using it in the way that I think it was intended, but I also had to gain that experience and that confidence first. So 2017, I launched the Light Journey and started offering mobile Reiki here in Calgary. And from there, it's kind of just transformed, and it's always growing. So I use my Reiki practice to work with women and men to help them overcome stress. I didn't have those tools for alternative health and wellness. And I wish that I did have those resources when I was a little bit younger and earlier on in my journey. So that's my approach, is to help guide clients to the tools and the resources that will help them to create self-care practices so that they're mindful, they're self-aware, and they're combating that stress through day-to-day living that feels purposeful, that's in line with their unique beliefs and values. And yeah, it's kind of led me to exactly where I am today.
That's great though. Like it's interesting how in life, like everything just kind of falls into place. And I find a lot of it is just being open to it when it comes to you. And I find for more sensitive people, like I can relate to a lot of your story about the upbringing and kind of feeling lost a little bit later on and not really like having a longing for something more, but not really knowing what that was. And just kind of once you find that, it kind of opens you up to being more open to exploring things and exploring different energies and different paths, and just letting your mind be blown by the experiences that are offered to you. Because a lot of it, I think for a lot of people, there's like a fear there to um opening themselves up because they're worried about what's going to happen, what's going to not happen, are they going to change. There's so many factors in the unknown, and then you let yourself have that and you realize everything's okay. um so what kind of path do you kind of see yourself on now though? Like, is this like, if you look towards the future kind of from where you are now? Because I can't see you being a person where you're like, okay, I'm content now and this is just going to be the rest of my life. Like, what's
Yeah. What's next? Where am I headed? Yeah, that's so funny, because I observe that of myself as well too. And sometimes I think it's like, and I think we do this just as people, as humans, right? We kind of have this end goal in mind, and we think that once we get there, it's like, okay, smooth sailing, like, kick back, relax, no more problems, no more worries. But it's always going to be, there's always going to be challenges, and there's always going to be work. But where I am right now, with Reiki and the light journey, I've been working on growing my Reiki wellness infused product line. So I use the Reiki practice to charge and bless a number of self-care items. I make herbal bath salts. I have anointed / dress candles, essential oil blends, just items to help people with that mindfulness and self-care, whether or not they're into Reiki, or, maybe they're looking for those extra tools to support them in between sessions. So it's just some items to support self-care, or even ritual work for meditation, new moon or full moon rituals, things like that. So I've been really focused this year and this summer on just building that, and adding new products. I'm taking a course right now in herbology as well too, because I really want to understand, not only the folklore and the magic side of it, but also the actual science behind how plant medicines and herbs can support our body and our healing. So that's something I'm really excited in exploring a little bit further. And even, I don't know what kind of lies beyond that, but hopefully by this time next year, I'll have my certification in that, and then we'll kind of see where that leads and how that grows. I also facilitate a women's group here in Calgary, Sacred Space Circles. So with COVID, it's been such just with everybody right now, I can sympathize on that lack of physical connection that we've all been kind of going through. And I started the community because working with women predominantly in my Reiki practice, I kept hearing this need for community and support. So many women are kind of on their healing journey alone, or maybe, they're a mother, or they just moved here and they don't have very many friends, or they don't have family, and they're trying to balance that work and that self-care. And that support element is so important in any of our healing journeys, to, like you said, to open up, to let people in, to kind of let down our guard, and be open to receiving, what people have to help and offer. So I wanted to create a space for women to come together and be able to just have conversations like this even, and talk about the things that really matter to them, talk about the things that maybe they don't have an outlet for in their day to day. Right now, I'm looking for a new space to rent to be our new home, essentially the community hub. I had originally been hosting them out of my home, and we just kind of grew too big to be doing that. And eventually I'd like that to be a little bit more inclusive, to branch out and, have sister circles or brand ambassadors in other provinces, to be able to do events and workshops and connect with people here in the community and provide them with that support and those resources.
That is really awesome though, and I think like it is important to have things like this because I know especially when you're on a spiritual journey, it's really hard to find people who you relate to, and it's really hard to find um I would say like good guidance because there's so many people out there who are just ready to take advantage of you when you're in a vulnerable state. So
Yes.
having more kind of relaxed groups like that is essentially it's a lot better because you need to get out and meet people to kind of find like I wouldn't even say like you could directly call it a soul family, but like your soul family in this life, like those people you really connect with, who you feel a strong bond with. And if we don't have social gatherings like that to do that, you don't really have much opportunity to meet those people because essentially our societies become either you're at a bar or you're on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
um, and I've been fortunate to meet some really awesome people on the internet, but it's just like when you're trying to find that like-minded kind of family to establish yourself into, it's so hard. So I really have appreciation for like the circles and stuff that are kind of popping up and kind of getting that awareness out more because it's just so hard to find people who can relate to your experiences, especially when they've been kind of out of this world.
Absolutely. I agree. I sometimes think that, exactly, the spiritual path can feel a little bit lonely at times because sometimes you have to walk it alone. So absolutely, as I mentioned, it's so helpful to have those connections and that support and just to be validated in your experience as well. Because like you said, when they're kind of mind blowing or out of this world experiences, then sometimes I know that doubt or that ego voice can kind of creep in and it makes you question yourself or, the validity of those experiences. So absolutely, it's so important to find that like-minded group of people.
Especially too when you try to reach out to people and they just don't like receive it well, they're not receptive of it, and like you just sound like you're going off the deep end because you have this really deep experience, and then you can go to one of your close friends or whatever, and that's kind of the thing that's a struggle with this because as you evolve, like you need people who are on the same level with you, and sometimes that means that people who have been in your life for a long time who were on the level you used to be on, like they haven't grown, and you kind of get stuck with having to let people go or not have that same relationship you had with them. So through all the discovery, it's really discovering new people too, discovering yourself, and just not feeling so alone in it. There is a lot of work that needs to be done alone, I agree with that, but you also need comfort from other people and have people to talk to about it.
Yes, absolutely. And I think so many people can relate to what you touched on in saying about kind of outgrowing, other people, or even just when you start to identify, like, I know sometimes it can be that fear of like, yeah, leaving some of those relationships behind or just continuing on, so I've had people kind of explain it to me of like, we can always invite those people to come with us, but it doesn't serve you to hold yourself back from your own personal growth to maintain something that might be unhealthy or toxic or just draining or not, like you said, you've just kind of outgrown it. So um,
A
yeah,
lot of
it's
people have this fear of like almost like they're worried about having a lack of love for people in their life by doing that, and in all reality, like really loving someone and respecting them is being able to say that this is my path and this is your path and this is the direction we're going, and not kind of forcing that relationship to continue on if it doesn't serve anymore. I think that's the biggest thing. Like, we're so worried about hurting other people's feelings, and it's just, you kind of realize as time goes on, like, everyone's lives keep going on. It doesn't matter who's in your life or not in your life. Like, your life's going to go on, their life is going to go on, and um we allow ourselves to grow by leaving that door open for other people to come in and kind of fill those spaces in our lives and to experience different people, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, no, it totally does, and that resonates with me so much right now as well too. I'm going through an experience where that's so relevant to what you just said. So I totally am just taking. I'm like, Steve, you're so intuitive, don't you know? You're giving me the messages I needed from the universe today. So thank you.
No, that's good. And that's why, like, I don't know. So my kind of how I got started on this was kind of, I think I watched like a Joe Rogan podcast maybe about like a year or two ago, and I was watching it and I was just thinking, like, I could do this. Like, I could just sit down and chat with people about whatever. And then I listened to like some lectures from Alan Watts. They're quite prominent on YouTube, where people have taken his lectures and put like ambient music in the background of them.
Yes.
And I absolutely enjoy those. And I just, it almost scares me for how far we haven't come when he was talking about what he was talking about in the 1950s. And then everybody now is like, we progressed so far since then. And I'm like, this is what this dude was telling us then. Like, how much have we really done if like we're kind of just circling back to all this stuff now?
Yeah.
But everything has its own place and its own time, and I definitely think like his philosophies were ahead of their time. I think we're becoming more aware of how he understood things back then. And more recently, there was the Midnight Gospel on Netflix, and I watched through that, and it was just, it's distracting. It's one of those things, you need to listen to it and not watch it if you really want to get something from it. Like, it is a trippy cartoon, but it's basically just a podcast about spiritual kind of themes, and it's very eye-opening, and I was just kind of got inspired by that. But then in terms of actually doing this, I had this idea, I want to say last fall, to kind of start recording meditations and putting them on YouTube. And I started doing it. I bought a microphone to do it. And after I bought the microphone, I stopped doing it. And I'm like, well, I just didn't feel like I needed to do it. And then I just have this equipment sitting here. And yeah, then just more recently, this, like I said, I just put this out to somebody and they were like, oh, yeah. So I just messaged a bunch of people and they're like, yeah, sure. Okay. So I don't know how far this is going to go. It's just, it's what I'm doing now. And I'm very inconsistent with my life. Like, I'm very much, I want to be settled and I want to be content with things being a certain way, and then the energy shifts and it's like, no, you got to go this direction now and change all this. So I've learned to embrace that and not resist it so much, because it's, I think, just the way my life is kind of meant to be. Like, I'm meant to be more of a traveler and pass through people's lives rather than sticking there, and um, just kind of seeing where things go as time goes on. So I've really gotten to a point more recently where I'm just embracing my life more and myself more, and not being, I'm very in touch with the spiritual side of it. I really struggle with being in touch with the more human sides of it. And I'm kind of slowly becoming more accepting of, the human side of this existence. Um, because with growing up in the situations that I did and kind of having the experiences that I did, it was really hard for me to accept this life for what it was. And then I struggled with depression for many, many years, and I really just genuinely felt like I was alone and nothing else was out there. And I had to become very disconnected in order to reconnect. And
Mhm.
then once I reconnected, it kind of brought it back around and brought me to being more open to what life had to offer and the experiences. And it's, yeah, it's just a journey. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I find, and your story of just kind of saying, we go a little bit through that darkness, I think sometimes so that we can notice, we can recognize and find the light. Absolutely. With this experience we have is full, the whole world experiences duality. So how can you recognize one without the other, essentially, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there is like, I've read about this and I kind of agree with it. There's just something about when a person hits rock bottom in their life, like just total absolute oblivion and darkness, and
Yeah.
you just feel like there's no turning back, and you just get to a point of surrender, and it changes something in you when you have that realization, and it opens a door that you just couldn't open. And once that shift happens, it brings you back up and it takes you higher than you ever imagined. Like if someone told me um, even 10 years ago that I was going to be, um, in my 30s, being this like deeply spiritual and tuned person who had like 500 crystals in his room, I wouldn't have believed them. I'd have been like, you're whack. Like,
Yes.
back then I'd been like, oh, I'm gonna be dead by then. Like it's nothing. Like there's no life for me. There's nothing. So it's just interesting seeing, like even reflecting on my own growth. I think
Yeah.
that's important for people to do too. Is turn around and kind of face that darkness sometimes, remind yourself of it, and take the time to assess really how far you've come and become aware
Yes.
of that. Because as you continually do that, I find it's opened me more to being receptive to keep growing, because it's like, if this is how far I came in 5 years, like how far can I go in another 5 years? So it becomes a motivator in a sense.
Yeah. And being able to recognize that those times of discomfort, the challenges that we go through, it's how we learn, it's how we grow, right?
Hmm.
It's how we identify, I'm not comfortable here, this isn't working for me. And then you have the power to make the change. Absolutely.
Yeah. And my biggest thing I've kind of been passing on to people is everything is a reflection of yourself. So if you're unhappy with the circumstances of your life or how things are, work on your relationship with yourself, and, you know, become more in tune with yourself, become more understanding of yourself, more kind to yourself. And I think the biggest struggle is because we're so stuck on like instant gratification, and people don't realize like this takes a long time. Like
Yes. A
I
lifetime. It
it
takes a
does.
lifetime.
And it never stops. Like there's
Yeah.
always that trap of where people have a spiritual experience and they're convinced that like they've ascended and there's nothing else to do, and like this is it now, and they get stuck in these spiritual traps where they don't allow themselves to grow anymore.
Yeah.
And it's comfortable, right? Like the biggest thing is the comfort with that. But
Like you said, it's about making that space to learn, right? Yeah. I loved how you touched on even just like a little bit of when you said Joe Rogan. It's so funny because it's another part, like, the whole conspiracy theory. And I think that's just part of that conditioning so that, it's easier to discredit somebody who's having, a talk of a spiritual or philosophical nature when you can just kind of lump them into that category. So it's something that I love a good conspiracy theory, but to me, it's just, I see it as a way, it's kind of like a challenge for people. It's like, actually break it down and think about it. Like just analyze, like, think for yourself, question everything. That's kind of what I
yeah,
see. That's how conspiracy kind of serves me in that way of just giving people, okay, don't believe it, don't, or discredit it, but maybe just look into it, decide for yourself.
yeah, and that's it, because they talk so much about do the research. And the funny thing about the internet is it doesn't matter what it is. If you want to prove to yourself that something is true, you can find information on the internet to back that up. So like conspiracy theories are like anything else, there's that duality with it. And either it can be a tool to kind of open yourself up and open your mind, or it can be that trap to kind of keep yourself closed-minded. And I find a lot of people who are really big into it, it's a distraction from themselves. Like it's something outside of themselves to keep them distracted from what's going on within. And um when it becomes that, it's not healthy. You don't have a healthy relationship with it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I just love that idea of, we're constantly learning. And that's something that as I get older, like you're never too old to learn, there's so much in this life to learn about. So yeah, it's just exciting, something to be excited about.
Yeah, it is. And like everybody can be a teacher in our lives. Even like we kind of discredit even the most frustrating people in our lives as like, ah, this person's a pain in my ass. But at the same time, like, what is it about them that's triggering something within yourself that's
Yeah.
making you feel that way?
Yeah.
Um, and even like I touched on this, I think, in one of the other episodes, maybe I don't really remember, but our children are our biggest teachers, and they basically take everything that we feel insecure about, that we're not happy of within ourselves, and they reflect it right back at us because they are spitting image. So a lot of people get frustrated with their children and they really have this egotistical mindset of I'm the parent, you're the child, I'm teaching you, like I'm the teacher, you're the student.
Yes.
And it's so very much the other way around, and people are so resistant to it. So I really um I guess messages for new parents or people who are going to be becoming parents is to just be very open to learning from your children. And it can be such a healing thing too, because if we can get in touch with that inner child again, like it allows us so much expression, which allows us to release so much that we hold on to.
Yes.
And it's just magical. Like I've really gotten more into my creativity the last few years, and I wouldn't say I'm an artist. I'm in no way good at what I do, but it's, to bust out some paint and some paper and just let my mind kind of flow whatever comes out onto the paper and just say, yeah, I did something, and to kind of let that energy flow through you. It's so opening.
Yes. And it's very important for that balance and even just that healing aspect too. Like you said, to embrace and nurture that creative center within ourselves, to tap into that inner child for healing, right? Some of the stuff that we go through in our past. It's interesting that you bring that up as well. I've been doing some work with just my feminine energy, even growing up and some of like my experiences. A lot of the household responsibilities kind of fell on my shoulders. Some of those. Being the mother role and having the responsibilities to kind of take care of my younger siblings, and before I could even really take care of myself. So I kind of came away from that nurturing part of myself. I didn't want to be a mom. I didn't want to have kids. I didn't want to take care of other people. I didn't want to be a parent to my parents. And only in recent years have I been able to kind of identify how closed off I've kind of been from that. And really just relearning that it is about stepping into that creative center and bringing to life. We all have a purpose. We all have unique experiences and insights. And, how is anybody supposed to know until you decide to either, verbalize it or create something and bring it to life? So I think that creative element, that play element is so important. And for some people, we get to 30, we get to 40 or however old, but people stop playing and they, it's like, exactly like you said, well, I'm an adult and I have to wear this adult hat and, yeah, we need it for balance. We really do.
Yeah, and I find too, like coming back to that, embracing the human side of things for people who struggle with that, the creativity really helps with that because that is part of that lower chakra system. And just it allows you to, like, when you can let go of that judgment towards yourself and just let yourself do something, it really allows you to kind of open yourself up to like just seeing your worth for yourself instead of looking for it externally. Um, and just something, just because it was on my mind, I don't know if this even really relates to what we were just talking about, but just finding peace within yourself is really like if you're looking for purpose and you can't find it, let that be your purpose to start out. We all have different things in this journey of life and multiple lives, but the biggest thing I think is being able to experience all that chaos and then be able to clear all that and just find that peace and just be content with you as you are, um, and be able to not feel so much like you need so much more than yourself. Because at the end of the day, um, we can lose everything we have around us, um, and we'll still always have ourselves. And like we, especially I think in North America, we get so attached to having so many things outside of ourselves, and we are privileged in that sense that we're allowed to have kind of so much, but then it becomes like too much
Yeah.
in that sense where we have so much it makes us feel empty because we are so concerned with everything going on outside of ourselves that we're not filling up the inside of ourselves.
Yes.
I guess my two biggest pieces of advice to people are explore your creativity and work on finding peace within yourself, because once you become content with the way things are, and it doesn't necessarily, like, I don't mean if you something gives you anxiety, it's there for a reason.
Yeah.
You do need to make a change, but as you make changes in your life and you find yourself more at peace with yourself and just developing those good solid relationships with people, and just clear out the clutter, like really take the time to go inside yourself and face all those shadows and just clear everything else away until you can really just sit there and nothing comes up for a while. Like if you can sit in peace and quiet and there's not some nasty thought about some trauma you haven't dealt with in the back of your mind, like you're doing really well with yourself. Because even now, like I still struggle with that. Like I go through, it's always up and down where there's that little bit of peace for a while and then the chaos starts to surface again. And then, you know, I become, you become a lot more self-aware as the time kind of goes on with that. But you sit down one day and you're like, oh, today was going to be that day that I was going to sit outside for an hour and do nothing, and your mind is just spewing shit
Yeah.
at you the whole time, and you're just like, okay, I got some stuff to work on.
Yes.
We need to kind of focus on healing this and letting it go, and um bring that peace back.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's those cycles that we go through, right?
Yeah, everything in life is just cycle after cycle, and you got to embrace that. Like it's not meant to be consistent. It's not like what would be really be the purpose of living if we were just supposed to find a comfort zone and sit in it and just basically be comfortable all the time? Like it would be boring. It would get boring. Life wouldn't have that zest that it has. The unknown just adds something to it that nothing else can,
Yeah.
because those pushes, those surprises, they really push ourselves to grow and to expand ourselves and to learn. And um, when we've become resistant to change, the biggest factor in that is inevitable change, which
Yes.
is things just happen. We just need to embrace things as they come. And
Yeah, and how we choose to approach them, right?
yeah, that's actually what I was thinking of earlier, is that glad you mentioned choice and it finally comes back to me. um Everything, for the most part, like I think some things are outlined, but for the most part, everything is a choice. Like we choose how we treat people, we choose our actions, we choose how to deal with things.
Yeah.
To some degree, we don't necessarily choose how to feel about things, we choose how to react to the feelings that come up when things happen. And realizing how much choice and how much control you really have over a lot of those factors, because I think people want, again, that instant gratification where they want to be able to say, I choose this, and it just happens.
Yeah.
um and they want to be able to choose to change the person who annoys them instead of changing their perception of the person who annoys them, because that's a lot more work.
Yeah.
um so it just really embrace all the choices you have. Like we choose our lifestyle, we choose how we feel about things.
Hmm.
And I think for me, like, I don't want to say like I necessarily cured myself of depression, but I feel like in some way I did. because a cure kind of almost implies that there was a medicine for it, and it was really just me getting my head out of my ass. I think mostly was the biggest step I took with that. But um, being content and choosing how to deal with things, like a lot of people, and it's not easy. It is hard, but like I just got to a point where I made a choice that I was going to get up at a certain time every day. I was going to go outside. I was going to go out in public so that I wasn't just isolated and alone in my apartment all the time. And like I chose at the time, I had a routine more that like I had a group of friends I was going out with every Saturday. And like I really kept that routine and stuck to it, and I forced myself. Like there was a lot of like in the beginning, it was forcing myself to do things and making that choice to get up and do them. And I had that realization that I couldn't expect that from anybody else to make me do it. And I am one of those people, I can honestly admit, I need people in my life to hold me accountable and
Yes.
just be like, get off your ass and do this. Like that's the biggest thing. Like if I ever get married, if I can find a wife who can just tell me to like not get mad at me for not doing something and just be like, go do it,
Yeah.
that would be like 100%. That's what I need, because I'm just very astrologically, I have a lot of earth energy, like way too much earth energy, and it's a lot of Capricorn energy. And people think of Capricorns as being materialistic, but then it gets to some level where there's so much that it's like moving feels like a chore sometimes.
Yeah, that's fair. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, no. Um,
I really like how you just touched on about, the power of making decisions and exercising that power. I think that's a lot of my approach in trying to guide my clients, is empowering them so that they understand that, once you get the awareness, you're aware of yourself, you're aware of, the emotions that you're having, why you're having them. After the awareness, exactly, you get to decide, you get to choose now. Do I want to keep going through, these patterns of behavior, these same thoughts that, clearly are weighing you down or not serving you? Or do you make the choice to step outside of that and learn, because we obviously need new tools to replace the old ways, and learn something new, so that you can start bringing that, ideal version of yourself, or that ideal, that version of your life, your authentic self, whatever it is that you're aiming for, you can start to create that and build off that foundation of awareness through exercising your choice.
yeah, and I totally agree with all that. And I do a lot of the same thing, I guess, when I talk to people, because it's just exactly that. Like I when people come to me, I very much tell them off the bat, like, I'm no expert. I can't make you do anything. I
Yes.
can talk to you, give you some tools and insight, but what you choose to do with that is up to you. So if you go, wow, this is a great talk, and then 2 weeks from now you come back to me and go, yeah, I'm back in the same spot again. I need to have a chat again. I'm kind of like, this is redundant. Like I can say the same thing to you over and over again, but until you choose to do something with it, there's
Yes.
nothing that I can do.
Yeah.
So I'll just keep repeating the same thing to you until you kind of the light bulb goes off. You go, oh, I get it.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
get it now.
You are the creator, right? That's the big one that I also like to share with people. You get to create whatever you want, right? Like you said, step into that creative center, create a life that you love, create, the image of yourself that you want to be, how you want to show up for yourself and how you want to show up for others. Everything, it comes from within. No, I know we touched on that earlier, but yeah.
Yeah, but even to take that deeper, and obviously belief systems differ, but this is mine. We're all extensions of creation. We were all came from creation as some vision, and with being extensions of that same energy, it makes sense that we would have that same power to create things.
Yes. Yeah.
So go out and create stuff, people. Like I
Yeah. Yeah.
make something.
Bring what's in your heart and what's in your mind to life. That's what I believe so much of our purpose here of this experience is. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
I like
Um,
to, the way that you said, I just like to word it as like, we're individual expressions of the same source, right?
yes. Something interesting I saw on your page recently was the like custom bath
Oh, the make your own
kits.
bath ritual kit.
Yes, I think that's
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. And I kind of was like, this is such a great idea. And why isn't anyone else really been doing this? Like, I've never seen that before, but like, I was
Thank
like,
you.
wow, like that mind like blew my mind to some degree because I was just why don't like the soap shops in the mall have something like this?
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you, Steve. Yeah, that's an idea that I just brought to life. And, I had an insight a couple of weeks ago that, this summer's been so fantastic. The weather's been great. And I've been getting outside so much and doing all these lovely activities. But then it hit me hard and heavy one day that I had been kind of neglecting my creative outlets. We just talked about how important that is. And it hit me with kind of a sadness because it wasn't even guilt, but it was like, just noticing that I had been pouring my energy into everything and everyone but myself. So it was like time to kind of rein it back in. And the make your own bath ritual kit is something I've had like written on a page in a notebook for too long. So that was one of the things that I was like you said, I just kind of kicked my own butt into gear and was like, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to do this. I'm going to put the time and energy into bringing this beautiful idea into the physical world. So that's what I did. And yeah, it's just a nice way to, again, get people thinking about their mind, their body, their energy and spirit a little more differently. Create a beautiful ritual in the bath, kind of like, a spa experience at home. You get to choose from different bath salts. There's essential oils and herbs, flowers that you get to create and kind of craft to meet whatever needs you have for healing, or even just whatever intentions you might have for your ritual, things that you want to manifest for yourself or even let go of and release. So yeah, I definitely encourage people to check that out if it's something that interests them.
Yeah, 100%. Do you have like themed bath kits too, or are you just kind of doing the custom ones for now?
Yeah, just the custom ones for now. But I'm always, some of my best ideas come from people that have suggestions. Right now in the works, I want to get a body scrub or like a sugar scrub going because, not everyone loves the bath. So I totally get that, and they still want something for the shower. So just things like that, if people have ideas, I'm totally open to them because it just helps as well for me to know what people actually need and actually want, the things that will help to support their mental health, their spiritual wellness. So yeah, I'm totally open to suggestions and ideas.
Well, I was just thinking, like, I know I see a lot of people post, they have like, they'll do like bath rituals for like the full moon and the new
Yep.
moon. So, like, why not have like full moon bath kits kind of thing that people can just, instead of having to go out and get all these separate things at separate places, like you would just kind of have everything together for them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a
I don't
great
know.
idea. No, I love that. And it's such a common thing that a lot of people are, I mean, people have been doing since the beginning of time, but more of that new age idea, more awareness, and people are becoming aware of just how to utilize that energy of the cycle and the phases of the moon. So yeah, I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. It's true though, like, I don't know. I only know this world from what I've experienced. I was born in the 1900s, so all I really know of is what's happened in like the 1900s to now. So I just find it interesting how it must be a cycle because it just seems like there were a lot of the generations kind of born in that century became just like extremely detached, and then it was almost like in the 60s and 70s, like everyone tried to kind of connect with it again. And there was like a brief spike of it. And then, I don't know, it was like the 80s and 90s came and it was just kind of, I felt like it turned more into like profit things like health and, those infamous exercise videos. And,
Yes.
but like there was just so much like spiritual disconnect for like consumerism almost, and it's just interesting kind of seeing it all come back around now.
Hmm.
um but at the same time, like it's such a huge, like that's kind of what I mean by the cycle. It's like it hits a climax and goes the other way, so it's like there's this huge transition now from like kind of getting away from that instant gratification and consumerism and just kind of shifting more into being content with having the minimum and connecting deeper with yourself. And I've done this. Well, I've done this a few. This sounds really unhealthy when I put it this way. I've done this a few times where like I've basically sold off like everything that I've owned and just kind of started out with nothing again. And the last time I did it, I just really wanted to prove to myself that I was going to be fine without all the material things in my life, because there is this part of you that's afraid to let them go because you feel like somehow your life is going to be incomplete without a bunch of inanimate objects
Mm-hmm.
surrounding you. And it was just so mind blowing how much I was able to connect with myself and how good I actually felt letting go of everything that I had that was material. And I, like you would think, like it wouldn't feel good to lose all of your material possessions, but to some degree, it's like there is this like there's something inside of you just kind of there's a spark of excitement letting go of all the old stuff and starting out new. I don't know. It was just that was an interesting experience that I personally had.
Yeah, I imagine that there would be a lot of a literal, like a physical lightness that would come from letting go of so much of that stuff. And I think that's kind of proven in like those, feng shui, or even what was it, Marie Kondo, that, was got so popular there for a while, of just helping people to exactly step into a little bit more of a more minimalist and sustainable mindset. Yeah.
Yeah, and it definitely helps with a little bit with like everything in your life too, though. Like realizing that um, you don't need so much food, you don't need so much clothing, you don't need so many shoes. Like if you have clothes to wear and you have shoes and you have food to eat,
Yeah.
like regardless of how much you have, it's enough.
Yes.
Um, and I think like I don't know, just having that realization really just helped me to start becoming more content with myself in a way too, because it made me realize that as much as I had convinced myself that a lot of happiness came from having all these external things, it helped me to realize that I wasn't actually getting any happiness from them
Yeah.
and that they really didn't make a huge difference in my life overall, other than I would, you look at it and you get some like instant stimulation in your brain from looking at it kind of thing. But any other uh any other creative projects you've got in the works right now? Ideas popping around?
Um, I'm sure there are some. Yeah, let's see. We talked about the products. We talked about the women's circle, learning about herbology. Um, I do. I'm hoping to start offering like the training, the teaching for Reiki right now. As I mentioned too, when I was looking for that new venue, event space kind of thing. I'm thinking about starting to rent a spot, because I am mobile, which means I travel to my clients. I bring my Reiki table. I bring everything to create a nice, healing space right inside your home. But I've been, we get these pulls, we get these messages, and I've had quite a few people over the last month that are asking, do you have a space that I can come to? Can I come to you? Do you work out of a clinic? So I'm considering finding a spot in the new year to, I think I'd still offer my mobile healing as well, but I'd like to have a space where I can be set up for people who are looking for that alternative. I think with, COVID and all the adjustments everybody's been making, people are really want to get out of their house right now. So, I like to be of service. So again, when I find that I'm hearing the same things from people, different people, then I feel like that's kind of a cue that, there's another way that I can be of service and help people and share, what it is that I do with them. So yeah, I'm putting it out there. I'm trusting that, the right space will come, that it's out there. I just have to find it. So I'm excited to kind of see how that develops as well too, to have somewhere more permanent to kind of be offering my skills and teaching, training others.
Yeah, and that's great too that you're so open to doing so many different things, because again, a lot of people get kind of stuck in that niche of this is what's comfortable for me and this is what I do. And then having a space for that would be great too, right? Because there's the kind of the two sides to that where you're more available just being mobile, but then at the same time, you don't have that space. But then, like, if you had the space, it might kind of hold you down a little bit where you wouldn't be able to be as mobile. So it's a balance for sure, but I'm sure you'll get all that figured out and
Yeah.
just see where it goes, right? I mean, you can always rent a space, and then if, you know, a year down the road you realize it's not worth it and you want to go a different path, like, it's we always have options, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it would just be a different experience, for clients, for me. So just something to absolutely explore and kind of see where it takes me. And yeah, I do love that, like I said, the practice and, the Reiki, it's always kind of growing and changing. And, there's what I want and then there's what the universe wants. So,
Yeah,
I think sometimes, like you said, or we get fixated sometimes on, a specific outcome, or that, things should look or feel a certain way. And then we can end up closing ourselves off to it because it might show up in a completely different form than what we were expecting. So I do try to maintain that openness because, yeah, absolutely. There's a time in my life where you kind of just get so zeroed in that you kind of put on your blinders and you can miss out on things that way.
definitely. um Going a little bit deeper, if you could meet with a past version of yourself, let's say maybe from 10, 15 years ago,
Mm.
um what would you say to them? What advice would you kind of give them to guide them?
Well, I think I could go back at any point in my life, like, 15 years old, 18 years old, 20 years old. I think I would tell myself, there's so much about like self-love and self-worth that comes up about really just trusting in myself and my experiences, and to not be afraid to, voice my needs and to share the thoughts and ideas that I have. I know a younger version of myself, so much like you said, of like not only seeking that instant, validation, but we want to be heard. And I know everybody has a story, but just because no one's listening doesn't mean that we shouldn't exercise our voice. So there's also that of, even though there's that fear that you might have to walk the path alone, or that you feel like you're not being heard, trust in yourself and that the right people will hear your message. And yeah, believe in yourself, love yourself, take care of yourself, trust in your experiences, and even, those gut feelings, your intuition, whatever you want to call it, to just trust. Yeah, that makes me reflect. I'm like, I'm gonna have to reflect on that a little deeper on my own even. Just that support is really what I think a younger version of myself needed, to know that I had the power to create and make the changes that I needed. I knew that there, something had to change, but I wasn't aware that I was the one who could do the changing. I was the one who could choose to leave behind, those stories I was replaying through my mind, or just those behaviors of feeling helpless as a victim, that I had the power to take responsibility for my life and make the changes I want.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing with that too, is taking the responsibility. And like, until you get to that point where you can take that responsibility, like, that's really the first step to making changes in your life. And if you look back to, like, to that whatever version of yourself you're talking to, do you think they could have seen you being this version of yourself that you are now? Like, if you went back and told them this is what your life is going to be, would they have believed you?
Yeah, I thought it was so funny when even you said that about like going back to like, 10 years and like telling yourself, yeah, have all these crystals and like, be into all these things. I don't know that a younger version of myself would have believed me. I kind of even say that in terms of the healing that I had to do with my parents. And I'm like, well, if you told, a younger version of myself that there would be forgiveness, I would have laughed in your face. Like,
It's
but
true.
and until that you get to a place where our perspective is always changing. You're gaining insights that you didn't have, that weren't even in your mental capacity to even understand some of those concepts at a younger age. So I, at this point in my life, a lot of my personal work and even through my meditation. So there's a version of myself that I can kind of see sometimes, whether it's like, you know, inner goddess or just a future version of myself. But I see that more clearly for myself now, that this authentic version of who I want to be, and, you know, what really resonates with my heart and my soul of what I feel like I'm here to do. I can see where I'm headed in that sense, if that makes sense, of kind of just this version of what I'm trying to embody for myself. And yeah, I think that just comes with, you know, having that faith and even that possibility, that knowing, you know, I still have a ways to go, but I'm making and taking the steps on the path now to embody that more fully.
Yeah, that's interesting too, like even the name of your business being called The Light Journey, because that's really what this is. And like even sitting here talking to you now, like we've chatted a bit in the past, but we haven't really had a full conversation. So I can definitely see like how that resonated with you, because that's what you're on. It's your journey towards the light, and it's such a beautiful thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Steve. And it's just also about getting other people to identify with that in themselves in whatever form it comes, because I totally understand, you know, it's not going to be Reiki, it's not going to be spirituality for everybody, but, you know, that I guess would be my advice, is find that thing that speaks to you, that touches you on that deep soul level, you know, those thoughts, those desires, those little whispers from your heart that maybe you only keep to yourself, or in a journal or in a notebook, you know, and just connect with that peace that you said, Steve. Come to that place of peace from within, and just hold on to it, and then take the steps so that you can create that for yourself, create that in the world around you.
Yeah, and like something I just try to put ideas in people's minds to get them to think differently, but something I often say to people, especially when they're really stuck on not knowing their purpose or feeling like they have no purpose, and kind of give them that moment to get it out. And then once they get it all out, I look at them and say, what if your purpose is just to find peace within yourself? Like, what if that is your purpose for this life? Like,
Yes.
ignore everything externally. What if you're supposed to just be okay with being you, and just being okay with being?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's a struggle. And not to say that really necessarily is anyone's single one purpose, that they're not supposed to do anything else. But when you can look at it from something so simplistic on that level, it opens you up to new energies. It opens you to really opening your mind up to things, and not having this need to be something to everybody else, because you know, being at peace with yourself isn't something that anybody else can really uh necessarily see in you on a physical level. Like you radiate the energy of it, but I would say I'm in a pretty good spot with myself. But when I walk down the street, like people just see some dude walking down the street, like they don't see that, like I'm not showboating anything. So yeah, like I encourage people to get past that really needing to like showboat themselves. Like you don't need to be some big grand something or other. Like you know, we don't all need to be movie stars. We just need to be okay with who we are.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Um, there's I think it's a quote, but it's essentially like, you know, if we're all looking out for ourselves, like at the end of the day, we're all taken care of, right? Like you
Hmm.
take care of you, I take care of me, and then we're all showing up as our best for each other, right?
Yes, totally agree. I think we'll wrap this up, but are there any resources you kind of recommend to anybody who's on their journey? Are there any books or websites?
Oh, well, there's so much information and knowledge out there. Yeah, I mean, I love to read, so there's always books to recommend. Not sure if you can see, I kind of have a stack behind me. You
Hmm.
touched on Alan Watts. Yeah, I love a lot of his stuff. There's you know, just a few books: The Impersonal Life by Joseph Brenner, A Course in Miracles. Just, you know, just things like you said, you know, that kind of just get people to start thinking a little bit differently. Um, the Chakra Key by Rick Ireton is another one that's just really cool guide for anyone who's looking to understand like the energetic side of themselves, or, you know, chakras and what they're all about. I love, you know, anything from like Don Miguel Ruiz. So the Four Agreements, the Fifth Agreement, their work is beautiful. You know, the Mastery of the Self. Yeah, lots of reading that I like to do. In terms of resources, like do your research, right? Find the thing that speaks to you. That's another thing that I always say to people. You know, I get that, like, I'm not going to be the one for you. Reiki may not resonate for you. That's okay. Keep looking and, you know, making those connections and trying new things. Step outside your comfort zone so you can find the thing that speaks to you, that resonates with you, and just helps you out. You know, people can always check out my website, thelightjourney.ca, for, you know, more about me, about how I use the Reiki practice. If you want to learn about the history of Reiki, you know, McHugh Yusui, that lineage and how it was founded. I have a nice write-up there on my website as well. So, and as well, checking out my blog. I do also have a YouTube page. Much like yourself, I was feeling that pull to like do some meditations to just, you know, help people or get people doing a little bit more mindfulness activity in their home. Yeah, and just, you know, sharing with people, encouraging you to just really connect with your mind, connect with your body, connect with your breath, and make that space for stillness and self-care, and really just take those steps to give yourself what you need.
All right, very well said. And thank you for being here today. I really appreciate this. Anytime, like if you got some new stuff going on you want to, or anything comes to mind you want to talk about, like let me know. We can definitely do this again sometime.
Amazing. I would love that. And thank you. It's so funny because I'm like excited, nervous of when I do like speaking things. So I totally relate. And I thought that too. I was like, what are we going to talk about? But I totally felt there was a good flow of conversation today. So thank you, Steve. And thanks for your time and your energy and just, you know, being a trailblazer and exactly holding the space for people to come together and share what they love. I really appreciate that you're doing that. So thank you. And yeah.
Thank you as well. All right, well, you take care and have a wonderful day, and we will talk soon.
You too, Steve. Okay.
Bye
Bye.
now.